Hatton Garden is located right in the heart of London, home to dozens of jewelry shops and workshops. Inside these stores, craftsmen and salespeople offer handcrafted pieces and unique jewelry. The area is home to about 60 independent businesses that specialize in diamond products. It is here that a large portion of the jewelry trade in the United Kingdom takes place. The robbery was planned by experienced criminals, many of whom had been involved in heists for decades. The gang was led by Brian Reeder, a man over 70 years old, who saw this as his final and most important job. Reeder assembled a team of equally seasoned criminals, with the target being a bank vault in Hatton Garden. The thieves knew that it housed millions of dollars worth of jewels. The operation took months of planning. The gang meticulously studied the surroundings, identifying weak points in the security system and searching for points of entry. They pretended to be locals in order to study the layout of the building and the positioning of the cameras. A key part of the plan involved drilling through a 50-centimeter thick concrete wall, for which the thieves needed specialized tools, including industrial drills. The robbery was set for April during Easter, when all businesses would be closed for the holiday period. The criminals knew that from Thursday to Tuesday, no one would be at the vault, allowing them to work undisturbed. They also hoped to bypass the security system without triggering alarms. Each member of the gang had their role to play. Brian Reeder was the mastermind behind the operation, handling the planning. Terry Perkins was responsible for logistics and coordination during the heist. John Collins was tasked with managing the team, including their movements and security. Carl Wood was assigned the most difficult task, drilling a hole in the wall to access the vault. 7 men participated in the heist, traveling in a white van without identification markings, approaching the office building on Hatton Garden. Disguised as construction workers, they wore hard hats, bright safety vests, and gloves, blending in as ordinary laborers. This allowed them to move freely through the busy streets of London without attracting suspicion. Using fake keys, the criminals unlocked the front door, sweeping away any evidence. They infiltrated the building and descended into the basement through the elevator shaft, where the armored vault was located. Behind thick concrete walls and steel doors lay jewels worth millions of euros, owned by wealthy English citizens. The vault contained jewelry, gold bars, and large sums of cash. The thieves found the distribution panel that controlled the alarm and surveillance systems and disabled them, leaving the building unmonitored. However, the alarm went off, sending a notification to the security company. The operator checked the message, but after a quick analysis, he dismissed it as a false alarm, thinking it was a technical error. This mistake proved fatal and allowed the gang to continue with their plan. When they reached the vault, the criminals took the industrial drill and began their work. They hoped the hole they drilled would be large enough to allow them to crawl through to the safe deposit boxes and steal the loot. The gang worked slowly and cautiously, trying not to make too much noise. After several hours, the equipment began to malfunction, and the drill got stuck, preventing the criminals from achieving their goal. The wall was tougher than expected, and the tools were unreliable. The criminals had to abandon the operation and return home, leaving some equipment behind. Realizing they needed more resources to succeed, the gang decided to prepare more thoroughly for their next attempt. Armed with new equipment, including a better drill and construction tools, the criminals returned to the vault. This time, they had planned every step and brought spare drills. Understanding that time was running out, they acted quickly. After several hours of drilling, the drill finally broke through the wall. Though the hole was small, it was large enough for them to access the vault. One by one, they squeezed through the narrow opening. Inside, hundreds of safe deposit boxes awaited, each containing jewels worth tens of thousands of euros. Once inside the vault, the thieves began cracking the safes using hydraulic jacks, which could break even the most secure boxes. They took their time, opening one box after another, pulling out expensive jewelry and large amounts of cash. Everything was placed into bags. After finishing, the gang estimated the total value of the stolen items at over 10 million euros. Despite the enormous volume of items, they managed to fit the jewelry into bags for easy loading into the van. After ensuring that all the equipment was collected and no traces were left behind, the thieves left the building, slipping away just as quietly as they had arrived. They used trash bins to conceal the bags and exited the building early in the morning when the streets of London were empty. The gang loaded the stolen goods into the van and made their getaway. The robbery was discovered on April 7th when employees returned to work and decided to check the vault. A massive investigation soon began. Police arrived at the scene and started their inspection. The wall had been breached and several safes were opened, with jewelry missing. Investigators combed through the premises, gathering evidence that could provide even the slightest lead. The hole in the wall through which the thieves entered the vault was immediately discovered. Detectives examined possible escape routes, trying to understand how the criminals bypassed the security system without triggering an alarm. The investigation revealed that the alarm had indeed gone off, but the response was ignored by the security staff. After questioning, it became clear that the operators had dismissed the alert as a false alarm, assuming a technical failure. The company was criticized, and the government later reviewed security standards. The investigation continued, and through surveillance cameras, investigators were able to identify parts of the criminals' faces. This led to the discovery that the gang members were elderly men, which was the first surprise for detectives, as they were accustomed to young criminals committing such heists. The investigation took a crucial turn when the police learned that a white van had been seen near the vault just days before the robbery. The van was caught on cameras near the entrance to the vault, and although the license plates were hidden, it helped create a profile of the thieves. A special task force was formed to analyze all available information and determine the direction in which the criminals had fled. The police began tracking connections that could shed light on the identity of each gang member. Soon, hundreds of records and photos were found. One of the criminals, unaware that his phone was being tapped, began discussing the details of the robbery with an acquaintance. This gave the police enough information to devise a plan of action. The recorded conversations contained details that only those involved in the heist would know. Once the suspects were identified, they were placed under close surveillance. Detectives followed the gang's movements and reviewed their communications. One of the most important leads was monitoring Daniel Johnson, who often returned to the hideout where some of the stolen goods were kept. The police were concerned that the gang might disappear at any moment, so they were forced to take immediate action. In early May, agents conducted a series of coordinated raids, arresting Brian Reeder, Terry Perkins, John Collins, and Carl Wood. During the operation, stolen jewels were recovered, though most of the loot remained missing. The evidence found at the suspects' homes confirmed their involvement in the heist. Among the items were jewelry and tools used to break into the vault. Over time, some gang members, including Daniel Johnson, began cooperating with the police and revealed the locations where some of the stolen items were hidden. Others, like Brian Reeder, remained silent despite undeniable evidence of their guilt. In January 2016, the jury delivered a verdict. The key figures, Brian Reeder, Terry Perkins, John Collins, and Daniel Johnson, were found guilty of conspiracy to commit robbery and sentenced to lengthy prison terms. This decision was heavily influenced by their criminal pasts. Brian Reeder, who had planned the robbery, was sentenced to years in prison, a punishment many considered equivalent to a life sentence, given his age and health. Terry Perkins and Daniel Johnson each received 7 years, as did 75-year-old John Collins. Carl Wood, who performed the hardest physical labor, was sentenced to 6 years, and Hugh Doyle received a suspended sentence for his minor role in the crime. After the initial sentences were handed down, it was revealed that a large portion of the stolen goods had not been returned. British law allows for stricter penalties if criminals do not return the stolen items, which led to further proceedings. In 2018, the court ruled that each participant must return a portion of the stolen items, proportional to their share of the loot. It was noted that the criminals had assets they could use to repay. The judge warned that if the stolen items were not returned, their prison sentences would be extended. Many of the thieves failed to meet the requirements, so their sentences were increased by 7 years. One of the unsolved mysteries remained the fate of the stolen jewels, including diamonds and rare stones, which made up a significant portion of the loot. These items could fetch enormous amounts of money on the black market, but selling them involved numerous difficulties. These jewels often have serial numbers and certificates, making them harder to sell. After the robbery, the police came up with many theories about where the jewels could have disappeared. However, their search yielded no results until they managed to arrest the gang leader, Brian Reeder. He claimed that some of the stolen goods had been sold before the arrest and had made their way onto the London black market. The investigation revealed that the criminals had made prior arrangements with intermediaries, allowing them to quickly sell the loot. Despite the risks, the criminals had developed a plan to conceal the jewels. They used trusted individuals and front companies to avoid direct contact with buyers. This scheme allowed them to quickly move some of the stones onto the black market and avoid police detection. The gang succeeded in selling a large portion of the jewels before the police began their raids. Later, the investigation shifted focus, and authorities began searching for possible buyers. As the stones passed through many hands, their identities were lost. Some were recut and sold under different names, with false documentation accompanying their transactions. This made it even harder for the police to track them down. Through interrogations, detectives learned that the criminals had used different methods to store the stolen goods. For instance, John Collins hid jewels in his personal stash. When his apartment was searched, only a small portion of the loot was found, suggesting that the rest had been either sold or very well hidden. The stolen diamonds and rare stones likely ended up in private collections, where they will be kept for years before reappearing on the market. The investigation did not rule out the possibility that much of the stolen property had been smuggled out of the UK. However, despite the disappearance of the jewels, the criminals were unable to avoid justice. And so, the infamous Hatton Garden heist came to an end. If you enjoyed this video, please support it with a like, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. See you soon.